Heidi, good to see you. Let's get over to 2 Samuel chapter 17. 2 Samuel 17, where we'll pick up. We've done most of 17. I always go back, and when I'm restudying, I see some things. Well, we didn't get to talk about that a little bit, so just to fill in a couple of blanks here as we get ready for chapter 18. The first being in verse 14, 2 Samuel 17, verse 14. And this is, of course, when Hushai has defeated the counsel of Ahithophel, even though Ahithophel's counsel was overall a better counsel. If you wanted Absalom to win, Ahithophel's counsel probably would have done that. But Hushai comes along and gets Absalom to rub his pride up and get him all thinking in terms of what glory he could have, and talks him into delaying before they go out to attack David. So anyway, verse 14 says, "And Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel." And then there's this comment, and we didn't get to talk about this too much, but the comment is, "For the Lord had ordained to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel." It struck me, he referred to it as the good counsel of Ahithophel. The Lord was intended to defeat it, going on so that the Lord might bring harm upon Absalom. And so regardless of all the decisions of man and all the wisdom of man and all the attempts of man to do what man wants to do, God ordains what he wants to happen, but uses that through the advice of Hushai and appealing to the people and all that. Now, if you're God up in heaven, and I'm asking you to make a conclusion, even though it doesn't say it in the text, make a conclusion based on what we know of other incidents in Scripture. So you're God up in heaven, and you have a conversation about you want Absalom dead. Who do you have that conversation with? Yeah, you got a bunch of angels. Who did God do that with? Ahab. That's right. God did that concerning Ahab. When he wanted Ahab dead, he had a big divine council, and he called all the angels together, and he said, "I want Ahab dead. Anybody got any ideas?" And then that's really funny. You're just like, God, why don't you just go, "You're dead." No. That's not how we're going to do this, because I want a lesson taught. So how are we going to get Ahab dead? And one angel says this, and one angel says that, another angel says this. Finally, one angel says, "I'll be a lying spirit, and in the mouth of all these prophets, he'll believe him, go out to battle and die." And God goes, "That'll work. Go do it." And so you wonder, how were the angels involved in this little thing here? That's what came to my mind. Obviously, we don't know, but we do know that is God's processes, that God uses these types of things in order to bring about stuff that's happening among humans. And he's like, they'll think Ahithophel is great, and I need to have a situation so that Ahithophel is defeated. And so one angel says, "Well, I'll tell you what, Hushai, I know, is going to go out and he's going to try to join up with David. So let's just put it in the heart of David to tell Hushai to go back and defeat the counsel of Ahithophel, and that'll work." And God goes, "Hey, great idea. Why don't you do that?" I don't know, I'm just throwing some things out. But it has been more and more interesting to me to think about how God operates through angels. And we see hints of this, and God doesn't go up, tell us every time he's using angels. But there's a lot of hints to it. Book of Revelation, how many times have we seen angels active? Whoo! That's going on all the time. Angels are involved in all the things that are going on there. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that out for fun. Look on down to verse 25. We maybe have briefly missed this, but I want you to get this in your mind. Verse 25, now Absalom had set Amasa over the army instead of Joab. Amasa was the son of a man named Ithra, the Ishmaelite, who had married Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, Job's mother. So how was Amasa here related to Joab? Cousin, yeah, his cousin. All right, so here is Absalom. It's almost like he's acting like his dad. Well, who am I going to get to be my captain? Well, I'll get my nephew. Well, who am I going to get to I'll get somebody of the same family, and I'll get Amasa to be my captain. So it's real important to have this fella Amasa in your mind. And the reason being, he's going to come up a little bit later when David returns out of his exile, and he is going to appoint Amasa as his captain and throw Joab out. So that's weird, right? Wait a minute, whose captain is Amasa? Absalom's. And then when they come back, David's going to appoint him instead of Joab, because he's mad at Joab and some other things that we'll talk about in a minute. So anyway, you put all those things together, there's just a lot of intricacy here. Now, by the by, when we come to the end of 2 Samuel, I have a whole 2-page sheet that's going to have to fill in blanks about who these people are, so that you know the story of 2 Samuel. So, ready, set, learn these names. I think 2 Samuel, the only book in the Bible that probably has more names than that are significant, more names than 2 Samuel, might be Genesis. But there's a bunch of them. All right, so we have that. Verse 27 through 29, I think we briefly did mention, here's David thrown out by his own people. When David came to Mahanaim, however you say that, Shobai the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the Ammonites, and Maker the son of Amiel from Lodabar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogleim. All these guys brought beds, basins, earthen vessels, wheat, barley, and flour, parched grain, beans and lentils, honey and curds, and sheep and cheese from the herd. For David and the people with him to eat, for they said the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. These are all Gentiles. So here's these Gentiles and Gentile age coming out to serve David, care for David, and to follow David. His own people have rejected him, and the Gentiles are accepting him. So we don't see any similarity with that. With Jesus, not at all. Of course we see similarity all the way through. John makes that point in John chapter 1, came to his own did not receive him, but as many other accounts in Matthew and others, Gentiles did receive him. Yeah, Wayne.
Would they have known when he was running from Saul, he went and hid it no longer?
Yeah, that's right.
So maybe they had relationships then, but I was wondering why they I mean, yeah, they were hungry, but your enemies don't ordinarily rush out and feed you when you're having trouble in your own house.
Well, these guys are not necessarily the enemies of David, though. David's had a good relationship, for example, with Nahash of the Ammonites, and there's been good relationships with these other kings. So at any rate, that you got to keep that in mind, and there were some good relations. But you're right, when he's fleeing from Saul, he visits some of these places and takes refuge there. Okay? Yeah, sir. Yeah. No small thing at all.
This is just massive.
Yeah. And they just bring out all this food. And of course, you could read over that real easily, but just think about, they've got to get ready for a war. they've got to get ready for battle, and they have been traveling all the way across Jordan and out into this wilderness area. If you look where Mahanaim, how you say that name, it's out east of Jordan in the tribe of Gad, about halfway out into the tribe of Gad. It's a very, very desolate type of area, and so, yeah, he and these people are in serious need. If they're going to be strong enough to be able to fight a battle, they needed this. It was very, very, very valuable. Okay? All right. So anything else then on chapter 17 that you saw we need to talk about? Yeah.
Real quick, I kept reading over Ahithophel's counsel and kept striking me how messy it is, especially reading John in our John study. We're about to get to Caiaphas when he says, we kill one man for all the people and everybody's at peace. And that's exactly what says here.
I thought of that.
I was tying that together.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Hadn't thought of that. Yeah, you just see all kinds of little, oh, wait a minute, that's familiar.
And the drive to the room and
Right.
just the picture
Yes.
of Revelation. Just interesting.
Yeah.
His words.
Over and over again. By the way, you may not have noticed, but when Hushai gives his speech, he consistently makes reference. Well, he twice makes a reference, first to a bear, verse 8 of chapter 17, a bear robbed of her cubs, and then in chapter 17 and down in verse 10, David's heart is like the heart of a lion. It's subtle references to these animals that David defeated when he was a shepherd. And so he's trying to show, David's really strong. And he just throws out the bear cub thing and then throws out the lion thing. And, so you see Hushai just throwing in subtleties, all that. And everybody's going, yeah, I remember David, man, he was tough. I mean, kills a lion, kills a bear. Wow, he's, okay, we're scared. You should be scared. But not because of David, but because of God. Okay, good. So let's go to chapter 18. And in this chapter, we're going to now see the picture here of Joab and the things that take place here as the battle begins to take place. So in chapter 18, verse 1, David musters the men who are with him. He sets over them commanders of thousands, commanders of hundreds. This is, just all the things that David would know exactly how to do. He sets 1/3 of the army under Joab, 1/30 under Abishai, and 1/30 under 30%, another third under Ittai the Gittite, and then David actually says, "I'm going to go with you." And you notice that the men say, "No, that you are not doing." You wonder if David isn't going, "Yeah, I made a mistake last time I didn't go out to battle. I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm going out to battle." And of course, they just, maybe they're remembering Ahithophel's argument. If David dies, it's over. The whole thing is over. And so they go, "No, you're not coming with us. You stay back, and you can organize everything back here at the camp. But we do not want you to go out and march then in the battle." So he follows their advice. You get down to verse 5, and the king ordered Joab and Abishai and Ittai, "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." And all the people heard when the king gave orders to all the commanders about Absalom. What do you think about that?
Some foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing of what?
Just the fact that they don't do that. Joab doesn't do that.
Yeah, Joab's not going to do it. Joab, of course, ends up killing Absalom. What do you think about the advice itself?
Very unconventional.
Okay, why?
I mean, he disrupted the throne. He was trying to overtake everything. He doesn't deserve death. It said reminded me, though, it reminded me of Jesus on the cross when he asked the Father's forgive them, for they know not what they do. They deserve death too. And Jesus forgives them.
Okay, so David, you say, well, David's trying to be compassionate here and things like this. Don't know if that's really what's going on, Michael. Oh, you were just, okay. Wayne, I think you were.
You know, when Nathan told us about the sheep, and that king himself said, repay fourfold, that he was going to lose 4 children. I wonder if all of these years he hasn't been overprotective of those children because of this prophecy that this trouble would come in his house and it would just run.
You're right. This is another example of wimpy parenthood. I'm not going to let my kids suffer the consequences of their own sin. Well, this is the reason you have an Absalom. This is the reason you had an Amnon. You let these kids never have to suffer for and meet up with the consequences of their error. And when you raise children that way, they learn that they can get away with anything. Go ahead, Adam.
So, to me, what is striking is the selfishness of the command. And I say that not because I think we should all just go around, killing people and all that sort of thing, but he's sending these people to battle to kill everyone else's sons. So everyone on the other side of the arrow and the sword, David doesn't say, deal gently with them, subdue them, but don't harm them. Kill all those people. I don't really care.
Yeah.
But don't hurt my son. And that, to me, that's an ultimate sign of selfishness in a leader and a lack of seeing what they're actually asking people to do, and potentially kill many good friends, brothers,
That's exactly
cousins that
right.
they had who had split away. But he's giving this weak-kneed sort of
Yeah.
command.
And just that's exactly right. And you think about that today. I have seen in churches where over a period of years, so-and-so gets withdrawn from because they get rebellious and they get into sin and they won't repent, and then somebody else has the same thing. And then somebody important in the congregation, his son or daughter, falls into sin, and everybody goes, I don't see anything. I don't know anything. No, you can't touch my child. No. If you lay off, if you do, I'll take my goods and go home and all my family with me. And you're like, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous, Michael.
I kind of struggle with that a little bit. Just from the standpoint of, I guess, the theme of the book of 2 Samuel so far. How many times David has been faced with, like, should I put this person to death? And he always says no. And all those times he's absolutely in the right. And Joab, or someone like Joab, comes in and, takes the vengeance for themselves. So, I don't know. I wonder here, part of this is to try to keep the peace, like he's been doing for the whole book of 2 Samuel. Like, don't kill Abner, because Abner's the key to peace in Israel. Don't kill Ishbosheth, because that's not our place. Don't kill Absalom, because maybe we could actually have real unity here, because the people's hearts are for Absalom.
Yeah, and I can understand all of that, except the previous examples, like Abner and etc., these are individuals who had come back to David. They're trying to do, this is not a rebellious, these others are not rebellious necessarily people. And it wasn't the way to handle some of those. But Absalom, he's the chief rebel here. If you're going to knock down a rebellion, I don't know how you save the chief rebel. Maybe David's thinking, if we could just save him, maybe I can talk some sense into him. You haven't been able to talk sense into him for how many years now? And so anyway, but I understand your point, and that's always a good thought to think. You think about David, you put yourself in that situation. Anybody here want to see your son die in that battle? No, even if you think he's a absolute goofball, you don't want to see that happen.
Well, I kind of concur with Michael, not to excuse any of the faults or sins of David, but these men had choices that they could make as well. As you and I discussed last week, some of this text, and I think we're so easy to throw David under the bus, but these men are responsible for their own actions.
Well, they are.
When you get to the point that your child is 50 or some years old and they go astray,
Yeah.
the fault of a parent that
Yeah.
raised them properly and right.
Yeah.
He wasn't the greatest example of a father,
Yeah.
but none of us are perfect.
Yeah. Well, and I understand. It's just that there's in this particular case, you have such a pattern that David has shown. It's not like David did his best raising his boys and this boy didn't turn out. That's actually not what happened here. He has made numerous mistakes with his sons and allowed this to build up, and then pretty soon you have a capital crime going on here. I mean, Absalom's trying to murder David and would happily murder his own father. So it's a pretty amazing circumstance there. So anyway, yeah, but nobody's saying this is not a difficult situation. It's definitely a difficult situation, but I think probably the feeling would be that if you were to say who was right in this, Joab, or as far as whether or not Absalom should be put to death, who was right in this, Joab or David, I think we'd probably lean in the favor of Joab, especially when God said, I want him dead. So God himself said, I have ordained that I want him dead. That's basically what's going on here.
What we see looks to me like is David the father and David the commander king.
Yes.
Because that's two sets
Good.
of responsibilities. And so
Yeah.
David the father is going to be pulled to protect his son.
Mm-hmm.
But as king of the country, he can't put his personal over.
Yeah. That's a great observation. You have David in between a rock and a hard place, and he is in favor of being a father instead of a king, and think about the good of the country, and not just what's happening here with Absalom, which that tough situation. But we're going to see this a little bit later too, as we go to chapter 19. It's going to be Joab having to rebuke David for whining and crying about Absalom's death, and Joab basically says, "You'd be happy if the rest of us died and Absalom stayed alive. That you'd just be thrilled, and you better get out there and talk to your men, or you're going to lose everybody." And you got to go, "Yeah, you're exactly right, Joab." He's being a real fool here.
And you already made a comparison to Uriah. This is very similar to how we dealt with that situation. He lost a battle and a bunch of men.
Yes.
For the purpose of getting Uriah killed.
Exactly.
So we have kind of a similar situation. You kind of understand why Joab's so frustrated.
Oh, yeah.
In this situation. You're making decisions for your own personal.
Yeah. Well, I think you can really feel Joab's position in a lot of these things about just because he's seen this inconsistency with David, and being close to him, he probably saw it more than a lot of people would have seen it, and it had to be terribly frustrating to watch him make bad decisions in different ways there. David.
David put a bow on some of the tension we're experiencing.
Yeah, David puts the bow. Yeah.
I relate a lot to what Michael says. It's really hard to look at what David is doing here and not see the heart of a merciful father.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's really hard to look at what Absalom's doing and not say, this guy is clearly rebelling. He deserves justice. What is David supposed to do? And to Melinda's point, there is this tension between David, the commander and king, and David the father. And I think one thing we see is that because David is a human being, this is a no-win situation. And we need to be pointed to Jesus as the only person who could be both the perfect judge and perfectly merciful and reconcile those two things in a way that no earthly can be.
Perfect.
The tension reveals need for Jesus.
David has saved the day and tied the bow on it. I think that's an excellent comment there. And by the way, you brought up a thought in my mind. What does the law of Moses say about a guy is to be done with by a guy with like Absalom? Put him down. Yeah. He who curses father and mother. You don't have to hurt. You don't even have to hit your dad. You just you curse your father. You're supposed to be put to death. Whoa. Dad.
This was David's part overruling what his responsibilities were. And I was asked the question, what do you think he was going to do with Absalom?
Yeah, I know. That's a good question.
How is this going to
Yeah, what are you going to really do with him if you say?
How can this be anything good for the kingdom?
No. You know, can't trust him worth anything. What are you going to do? Put him in the upper room and lock the door or something? You know. Yeah, it's definitely.
I think David was wanting to save him to make an example of
Yeah. Yeah. Tough situation, no doubt. So anyway, David gives that command. The scripture here is very, very just to the point, quick and brief. Down in verse 7, battle takes place. Israel's defeated. Servants of David win. The nation, the Israelite part of this battle, those battling against David, lose 20,000 men. 20,000 men. That may have happened in one day as far as that battle is concerned. And then the interesting little comment in verse 8 is that the forest devoured more people than the sword. So you got these low-hanging trees, and everybody's flying along on their mule or their donkey, and whoop, there goes their head as they're looking to see who's going to shoot at them. And then just to illustrate how easy that happened, you see Absalom then in verse 9 going through some thick branches. His mule goes through this, and there's a great oak, and his head gets caught fast in the oak, and he's dangling from the ground, and he can't get himself loose. There's just, we've all heard that his hair got caught there, right? That's what we've all heard. There's one translation I could find that said hair. That was the NIV, and it's not in the Hebrew. So you go, okay, that doesn't mean it couldn't have been his hair. In fact, I would like to think it was his hair, and the reason I would like to think it is because when you go back to chapter 14, you see him with pride cutting his hair and weighing it once a year, and this is a big deal with him. And so the arrogance and pride of Absalom with his hair and how beautiful he was becomes his downfall as his hair gets caught in the tree, and he dangles there until Joab comes and kills him. So, it's a kind of nice counterpart there that would take place as far as the message. But anyway, however he was caught, he's just dangling up there and cannot get loose.
The word head there is the same word in Genesis chapter 3 when it says that the seed of woman would bruise
The head. Yeah.
I don't think we thought that Jesus was going to pull the hair.
Pull the hair, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Good point. So anyway, there you get him, get that situation, and then Joab, as you know in the rest of the story here, Joab completes the death of Absalom. One of the servants sees him hanging in the tree, goes and tells Joab, and Joab goes, "What? Why didn't you kill him?" He says, "I'm not killing him. David said not to kill him." And then Joab just goes down there, and it says he threw 3 javelins at him. Now, interesting, the word javelin here means rod. And the javelins, if you'll note, read carefully, what he threw at him and hit him in the chest, didn't kill him. apparently knocked him out of the tree somehow, but didn't kill him. And then they surround him, or if he did fall out of the tree, but after they hit him with that, then verse 15 says, and 10 young men, Joab's armor bearers, surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him. So he throws these 3 javelins. So some commentators suggest that the word there for javelin is the same word that's used in Proverbs when it says, don't spare the rod when you spank a child. So the thing, a javelin is defined in the Hebrew as a blunt end, something like that. At least that's how it's translated. It's translated javelin, but they said it's just a blunt end, heavy stick of wood that would be thrown at him. And maybe that knocked him down out of the tree and they surround him and kill him. But however it was, Joab just takes upon himself, of course, to go right ahead. He ignores anything that David has said. Now, as soon as Absalom's dead, what does Joab do? What's his announcement? It's over. So you can give a little kudos to Joab. Joab's not interested in shedding more blood. He could have. He immediately calls his army off. This is Ahithophel's counsel in reverse. Ahithophel said once David's dead, it'll be over. And the same thing has happened now to Absalom. Once Absalom is dead, battle is over. No reason to go after these guys anymore. Let's kiss and make up here. Let's get this back together. So you can hand that to give Joab a little kudos here from in that regard. Now, couple discussion questions here. First off, can you remember the good things that Joab did for Absalom? What were some of the things Joab did for Absalom?
Got that weird lady to come tell the story.
Yeah. He does all this stuff to bring him back out of his captivity, so to speak, to bring him back into good graces. And then after he gets back in Jerusalem and David still won't give him an audience, Joab, of course, at the urging of Absalom, burning his field down. But Joab, instead of, which I probably would have done, wringing his neck for burning my field, you couldn't just come and have a conversation with me. He goes in and forgives that and goes to David and asks David to take him back. And David does this. And how does Absalom then repay Joab for these good things he did? Yeah. He turns around, spends the next 4 years overthrowing the kingdom and starting a civil war and et cetera, et cetera. So again, you're seeing some real ugly things out of Absalom. This man is amoral in many, many different ways. So really bad. Now, let's talk about Joab for a minute here. So here's where I'm really interested in what you think. So first question I think we have to ask is, did Joab act in a way, in many cases, did he act in a way in order that you would say was for the benefit of David and the benefit of the kingdom? You think of some of those things that he did. Yeah, fought battles like crazy, man of war. When David said, let's go do this, Joab was there to do it. He was one of David's 30 mighty men. So you got to hand that to Joab without a doubt. Okay? Anything else? We just talked about killing of Absalom. One could argue that was a smart thing to do by Joab, even though it was not obeying David. That might have been, not killing him might not have been good for the kingdom. Later on, chapter 24, do you remember? If you've read the whole book, what did Joab do for David there? Yeah, he tried to stop him from numbering the people. And Joab actually went to him, seeing David why would you number the people? Well, you're only numbering the people because you're lifting yourself up and trying to say, look what a great king I am. Look how many men I rule and all that kind of stuff. And Joab goes to him and says, don't do that. You don't want to do that. You're king, all this. And he tries to appeal to David, and David will not listen to Joab, even though it was excellent advice, and does it anyway. And then David pays some serious consequences for his numbering of the people and not listening to what Joab said. Okay, so that's that, and maybe we could think of some other things that were positive about Joab. However, on the other hand, what's the other Joab that we know? What did Joab do in these other situations? For example, what is one of the worst things Joab did in the very beginning of our book? He killed Abner. Is that what you said? Yeah. He killed Abner. I mean, he murdered him in cold blood. He had absolutely no reason. Partially, well, you did have a reason in his mind. Partially, maybe because Abner had killed Asahel, his younger brother. So that could have been. But that was a battle type of thing, and Asahel really deserved that. Abner tried his best not to have to kill him, but it came down to self-defense. And then you see him doing that, and then, of course, he disobeys David by killing Absalom. And then this Amasa guy, his cousin, who becomes captain later on, Joab murders him. And then later in 1 Kings, and when Adonijah decides to rebel, where's Joab? He joins Adonijah. Okay, so you're looking at a situation where you see Joab doing some good things and some positive things and some things that we would say, yay, Joab, I'm glad you did that. And then we're seeing these other things and evaluating that. So as a subject to the king, how do you evaluate Joab? Yeah, he's a good politician. That's right. But he's going to do what? He's going to get his way. And when things work out for what he thinks is right, then Joab's going to do it. If you evaluated that kind of service before God, what kind of person do you have? Yeah, a self-centered person. The reason I bring this up is I will never forget, as a young preacher, listening to an older preacher give a sermon. I think I may have given this illustration here at least once, but it's been many years ago. But the preacher told a story about a man who was going to take a journey to a faraway country, and he had given his son a piece of land to develop. And he said, son, I'm going to give you this land, but here are my instructions for the land. I want you to put the house over here on this side of the land. I want you to put the barn and the animals and all of that. I want that over here on this side. And I want you to put the well out next to the barn. And the son said, all right. So dad goes away for a long time, and the son builds the house exactly where dad said build it. And then he builds the barn exactly where his dad said build the barn. And then he looked at where dad said to build the well, and he went, that doesn't make sense to me. The well needs to be closer to the house. And so he moved the well over near the house. His dad came home, and son gives him a tour and shows him the house. Dad says, great, exactly where I wanted it, exactly like I liked. Shows him the barn. Great, exactly what I wanted, that's where I wanted. He says, now Dad, I didn't put the well where you said. I put it over here because I thought it'd be better. And his father said, son, you haven't obeyed one thing I told you to do. Now, when I heard this preacher give that analogy, I thought, really? He said, son, I'll tell you why. You put the house where I told you to put the house because you agreed with me that that's where the house would be. And you put the barn where I told you to put the barn because you agreed with me where the barn ought to be put. But when you disagreed with me, you did what you want to do, which indicates you didn't do anything I told you to do. You did everything you wanted to do. And that's how I see Joab. When Joab agreed with it, Joab did it. When Joab saw it was to his advantage, Joab did it. But when it came to David telling Joab to do something that Joab thought was dumb or he didn't want to or he didn't think it worked to his business, he didn't do it. Now we could argue all day long, well, it was a human king and all that, but we don't get away with that with God. And I would say we don't get away with that with treating God's king that way. Are we not treating God the same way? So you can think about that in terms of anybody we are under the authority of. Be careful. Yeah, maybe what they're saying is not brilliant and you can appeal, but be careful how you handle that.
I think it's also important for us to
Consider that when we think about Paul's lessons in Ephesians about submission to one another. And that if we want to seek peace and all kinds of good things for our congregation and for our families, if we're only submitting to one another when we agree, we're not submitting. And so submitting ourselves to another sometimes is going to mean that we're uncomfortable, we don't like the answer, we disagree, but we are yielding with grace.
That's right. So important. Well, and in actuality, if you only do what you agree with, you're never submitting. Submission implies I'm not exactly in agreement here, and so but I'm going to submit, and I'm going to go along with this. It's just like the guy I was talking to that had come into the church building and asked me for money, and asked the elders for money, and one of the elders said, he was a young guy, 30 years old. He says, well, have you ever got a job? Oh, yeah, I had a job. I had a job for about 3 months. I got sick and tired of telling me what to do. I'm not letting anybody tell me what to do. Okay. Well, you're going to have a rough life, dude. Would you, Danny?
I'm just sitting here thinking that's really the definition of humility.
That's right.
When you
That's right.
want to do what you want to do, and
That's right.
you get accolades for that.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But when you have to you don't necessarily agree with, you don't seek the wisdom.
That's right.
That's where humility is.
That's exactly right.
Now, if Jesus had the attitude, well, I go along with this to a point. I don't know about this.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, exactly.
That's why he's
right.
the perfect example.
Exactly. Yeah, Philippians 2, obedient even to the death on the cross. Yes, obedient. Beautiful picture. And that just blew up at me as I was studying this thing about and just seeing Joab's life. Here's a guy who is not a humble, submissive kind of guy. When he thinks it's to his advantage or he thinks it's different, he's going to do it his way. And that is a mess in an organization, any organization. Is there somebody else over here? Okay. All right, good. Yeah, Michael.
This whole passage reeks of Jesus as well. Again, of Absalom, bad way to say it.
Reeks of Jesus.
Lost, pleasant, I don't know.
Absalom is a strange type of Jesus here too, in that like he hangs from the tree, he's pierced 3 times, and then he's buried under a rock. And then the outcome is obviously 2 very different things. Absalom is no descendants, no offspring. And Jesus, that's not the end of the story.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of little similarities throughout that. We got just about 2 minutes here. So the very end of chapter 19, chapter 18, the very end of the story is that somebody's got to go tell David. So Ahimaaz, who is the son of the priest, he says, let me run, let me, I want. And Joab goes, no, you're not going, because this is bad news. David's not going to take this well when he hears about Absalom being dead, so I want you going. So he sends a Cushite instead. And the Cushite then takes off, and Ahimaaz says, no, please, I want to run too. And he goes, why? Yeah. And he goes, please let me run. Okay, go ahead and run. So Ahimaaz takes a shortcut and can run faster than the Cushite. So that always shocked me. But at any rate, so he beats him there, and when he tells David, how's the army, how'd the war go? And he goes, we won. He says, well, what happened to Absalom? He says, well, I don't know. So you weren't going to tell him that part. And about that time, the Cushite shows up, and he goes, what happened to Absalom? And he says, I'm sorry, guy's dead. And David goes into serious mourning, and that's where we'll have to pick it up then next week. Okay. So very good. Thank you.